Good morning and welcome to my channel. My name is Christina and I like to color. Today I just wanted to do a quick tutorial on how I got this jumper looking like a knit jumper, which was my goal obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. So this is just a quick tutorial showing how I did this. So yeah, I hope you enjoy. So to begin with, I started with a light layer of Prismacolor Carmine Red. Just make sure it's a light layer. You don't want to use all your pressure right now. And go over the whole jumper using the Carmine Red. Excuse my mess on the table there or the desk there. I am not a tidy colorist. I have to leave everything out that I am using, otherwise I forget what I'm using, even though I don't forget, but I need it there and it needs to be messy, which drives me insane, but it's just the way I do it. I have to have everything out, so that's why I can only work on one coloring at a time. I do have two desks, but the other desk is clean and tidy. So you're just coloring this whole jumper in the Carmine Red. And the reason I chose red was because really with the color theme I was going with this one, I only had 4 choices of main colors. So red, yellow, orange or brown. I didn't want yellow because her hair was going to be sort of a yellowy orange and the background was yellow as well. And I didn't particularly want orange either, for the same reason, mainly because of her hair, because I wasn't quite sure what color her hair was going to be. And I didn't want brown because well, I'm a girly and I like girly things. I like pink things and red things, and a brown jumper to me just sounds more like my grandfather. No offense if you like brown jumpers, it's just my opinion. I don't like brown jumpers. I like colorful jumpers. Anyway, on to the next color, which is poppy red, which I use in the shadows. And if you're doing Christine Caron's book, she has the shadows marked in there for you. So it's quite easy to figure out where the poppy red goes. Now, you don't want to do heavy pressure on this either. You want to build up the layers, and to be able to build up the layers, you have to do it lightly. So just keep going over all the shadow areas with the poppy red. Most of them are marked out. I also added a shadow area underneath the cup because, in my opinion, with the cup being there, there's going to be shadow at the top of the jumper. So I added shadow areas there using the poppy red, and then eventually the Tuscan red. Now I wanted this red jumper to look like a knit jumper because well, just the whole picture you get from the vibe of the picture. She's holding a hot cup of, well, we'll say coffee, but we all know it's bourbon. She's holding a hot cup of whatever. The leaves are falling. She looks cold. And so, you know, in movies and things like that, people wear knit jumpers. I personally don't wear them because I find them scratchy and itchy. But yeah, she's wearing a knit jumper. So that was the look I was going for. And next is another layer of the Carmine red. This is to blend everything together and start to, well, not everything, but just the 2 layers you've already done, to blend them together again and to slowly build up the layers so you can get a decent red on there and color in all the white. If you don't do enough layers, you will get the color doesn't look quite right. And this layer of Carmine red is still light. You're not going to use heavy pressure really on the Carmine red. You will eventually use heavier pressure in the darker shadow areas. And next is my teeny tiny Nemesis Prismacolor Tuscan red. I use this color all the time, but I really hate this color because it breaks. It's so small because I have to sharpen it 6,000 times in order to keep when I sharpen it, it breaks. Sharpen it, it breaks. I have put them in the oven trying to melt the wax. It worked a little bit, but wasn't great. So you just have to be really super careful when you sharpen it. Otherwise, the slightest thing and it just snaps, and it's so frustrating. Anyway, you're going to use the Tuscan red on the lines here at the top of the cuff and also in the shadows. Now I'm not using light pressure, but I'm also not using medium pressure, so I'm pushing a little bit harder than what I did with the poppy red, but not hard. So you're just going to go through and go over all the areas you did with the poppy red. And don't forget, coloring is all about what you want to do, what your end product is in your mind. So if you're not happy with something, make sure you go over and fix it again. And that's why I tend to stare at mine and take a lot of photos of mine so that I can see what I'm not happy with and fix it. So if there's something that you want different, you do it different. And when I'm doing the darker shadows, sometimes I go over it twice with the lighter pressure just so that I can start to build it up, and then I will get the Carmine red or the mid-tone and blend it all together. And I wanted these lines on the edge here to stand out a little bit more than what they were, so I went over them with the Tuscan red just because I thought in my mind they looked better with the outline line going down the edge. I usually try to avoid doing lines on the edges of things, and you just try and blend things together and get the color right and the shade right, so you don't have to do the line, but I thought these look better with the line going down. And next is the Carmine red, which is the very first color you use to color in the whole, so the mid-tone color. And I'm just going to do a little bit heavier pressure than what I was doing on some of the shadow areas, just to try and get that color into the shadow areas as well, and get the shadow areas look a lot darker, so you can start to see the shadows and the highlights. And the next color is going to be the poppy red, which is the very first color I used in the shadows, and going to go over the shadows again. Now this may seem like a lot of layers and you could just do it really heavy in the first instance, and I'm sure you could. I like to do a lot of layers and add a couple of different colors in there and slowly build them up, because to me it looks better. You may find just the one heavy pressure layer looks better to you, so yeah, but I like to do a lot of layers and build them up. The pressure I'm using here would be medium pressure because I'm starting to want the color and the paper to be filled in, so using medium pressure with the poppy red in the shadow areas. And next is going to be the Carmine red, which is the initial color that I used. I don't know why I keep saying you. That I used to go over the whole thing, and it's the color that I use to blend everything together because it's the lighter color. And I like to blend things together when you've got lots of layers, because if you don't blend it together, then, well, as you can see, it just looks scratchy and not quite right. So when you go over and blend things together with the lighter color, it starts to bring it all together. And after this, I am going to get my Caran d'Ache blender and blend it all together again. I have used other blenders, and I've used the Derwent one, and I think Prismacolor have one. I think most of the main pencils have one. I have found the Caran d'Ache blender, this particular one here, that's like a leadless, no, a woodless pencil, to be the best and gives the result that I want. It does leave a sort of a waxy residue on the top, but so do Prismacolors and most waxy pencils. But yeah, that can be, you just go over that with another layer of pencil and that's gone. It's not waxy per se, it's just you can see where you've colored in if you don't color in smoothly and gradually. But you can see how it is blending everything together. It's keeping the shadows. It's making the highlights a little bit darker, but that can be fixed. But it just makes everything become smooth and it's starting to look like a real jumper. I'm a real fan of the blending pencil, in case you can't tell, because I do so many layers. It really helps me out blending everything together. You can also blend with a white pencil, but obviously white on top of the red is going to make it pink, so that wasn't really an option I wanted to do. And now I'm onto the lovely Tuscan red, which I love so much, doing the cuffs again and the shadows, and this will be medium pressure because I really want the shadows to start to come out and be prominent more so than the highlights. So just going down all the shadows and all the creases in the jumper or sweater arms to get the shadows to come out. See how just because I'm using medium pressure now, you can really tell the difference between the shadows and the, they're not highlights, but the midtones. Now I would usually do this tutorial as I'm coloring, so the sound would be a little bit better, but we had 3 long weekends in a row. We had Easter, we had Good Friday and Easter Monday, and then the next Friday we had Anzac Day, and then this Monday was Labor Day. So we had 3 weekends where we had 3 long weekends, and I think it was rainy. The kids were here. They are not quiet, and I can't tell them to shut up, though I wish I could, but yeah, they're allowed to live in the house too, so I couldn't do this tutorial as I was coloring, and I really wanted to color and get this done. So yeah, that's why it sounds a little different than what it normally does, and probably why I'm talking more, because while I'm coloring I forget to talk. So just keep going over these shadow areas with the Tuscan red. I do 2 or 3 layers now because I'm starting to get to the end of the layers that I'll be doing, so I really want it built up and getting shadowy. So just do as many layers as you need to do, but still leave room for a couple of extra layers of, so black and probably Tuscan red again, and maybe a Carmine red again. This time when I use the Carmine red, I'm not going to go over these shadow areas because I will just end up lightening them. As silly as that sounds, it does happen when you go over them with the lighter red. So I'm just going to go over the mid-tone areas with the Carmine red using medium pressure. As you can tell, it's starting to, all the white and graininess is starting to go away. So you can tell when I'm using medium pressure because the graininess gets filled in, and that's the whole goal. You want to start to fill in all the graininess now. And as you can tell, I just use my brush because Prismacolors are notorious for dropping crumbs absolutely everywhere, and then it gets on the edge of your hand, and then you move your hand on the paper and you rub it all over the paper and you get red smudges everywhere. So just keep using the medium pressure and go over all the midtones, and then the next thing I'm going to do is get my electric eraser, which is probably the handiest tool I have. And with that electric eraser, I'm going to start to go and make straight lines down, because that's what I wanted to do, because I wanted it to look like a knit wool jumper. And so I'm just going to do straight lines going down, which was a little difficult, I will admit. Yeah, so just do the best you can and just going down and doing all these lines. Do it in the midtones and a couple in the shadows. Try not to get rid of your shadows when you go in there, so that's why I didn't do it in all of the shadows like the ones on the edges. And I used a little bit less pressure when I on the electric eraser when I was in the shadow areas, just so I didn't take away all of that work that I've just done. But I really wanted all these straight lines to indicate that it's been knit wool, knitted like a wool jumper. I didn't want to do lines across as well, because then it would just kind of look like a check pattern. And next is black, my teeny tiny black, and going to go over the darkest shadows that will be there. Use black sparingly. If you can always erase it, but it never looks the same again. So I'm always pretty cautious when I use black, and I just initially stick to the darkest areas, and probably a little bit lighter than light pressure, but I'm definitely not using medium pressure. And I always go over the black with the shadow color or whatever color where it is, so that it doesn't look black, so I will go over it with Tuscan red so that it looks red, but it also looks, you've got the black underneath the red to make the shadows darker, and go around the cuff as well. So use it sparingly, but make sure you do get into the shadows, because black in the shadows can make the shadows really pop. If you don't get the shadows dark enough, then your picture doesn't look quite right. So when you're confident, you have to get into those shadow areas and make them dark. And sometimes that can be a scary thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do. I've had pictures where I stop, where I haven't put the shadows in, and I take a photo of it, and then I put the shadows in, and it looks 1000% better when the shadows are dark. Now this is my Tuscan red going over the shadows again in all those areas where I just did the black, because like I just said, I don't want it to look black. I want it to look like a shadow underneath the Tuscan red. So make sure you go over everywhere that you've just done black. And I know the layers are building up and it may seem pointless, but I really like layers and I like the look you get. So make sure you go over all the black, and try not to go over the electric eraser lines that you've just done, because then you'll have to go over and do it again, which I probably will do because I usually do. And next is the Carmine red to go over the very tops of the cuffs of her jumper. I didn't want that area too dark and I didn't want it too light, so I left that till the end so that I could figure out what color I wanted. Closer to her arm is going to be in shadow, so I'm using medium pressure on here, and I'm going to get the black now and go over where it's closest to her hand because that is definitely going to be in shadow. I'm not coloring here, I'm just drawing the lines and just going in the little shadow areas there where it's going to be really dark, but the main thing is just going over the lines. And like I said before, go over the black with the color that you have, that you just went over it with. So I went over Carmine red, so I needed to get Carmine red over the black again. And now the white. Now white on pink can be a little dangerous. Sorry, white on red can be a little dangerous. It can turn pink. I did it very lightly here because I just wanted this edge to be a little bit lighter. And I also wanted the lines that I did with the electric eraser to be whiter, but it's a iffy game. You could turn it pink, but it didn't turn pink, so that was handy. And the final thing to do is go over the shadows again, because when you do lots of layers you tend to lose the shadows, and you really want the shadows dark. I know I've said that a lot of times, but it's important to have your shadows dark. So get the Tuscan red and go over your shadows again, and try not to completely cover the white lines. You can lightly go over them because they will obviously be lighter than the mid-tone ones. And yeah, just go over your shadows again, and that should be the jumper done. I usually sit down and do the shadows and highlights again, but I don't always record that because I just assume people get bored seeing the same thing over and over again. And apart from some more blending and shadow areas and just fixing things up, doing the same colors, that is the jumper done. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for watching.